What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Win on Purpose podcast. I appreciate you for taking time out of your day to join us to glean some more good information here. We are at the Transformed Health Initiative headquarters as usual in Moore, Oklahoma. So check us out, guys. Outside of that, man, it's a interesting day today. So I'm actually recording this on January 9th, kind of getting ahead a little bit. And it is snowing like crazy here, guys. They've been predicting all week that we're going to get a snowstorm, and they have, I guess the atmosphere has delivered, and it's definitely snowing like crazy out there. So our schools weren't canceled. My kids are in school, but hopefully, they'll get a snow day tomorrow so they can actually enjoy it and be kids. Because I tell you what, I was talking to a client the other day, and it's crazy how, like, when I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma City, I remember that we got snow pretty often, and I don't mean just like some dusting. We got like real adequate snow, because I remember building snowmen taller than me, so big that I couldn't even lift the head up on top. I'd have to have like my older brother or my mom come help. So I mean, I really wish we could get back to those days, because I love snow. I don't love the ice for sure, but I do love snow. It's a lot of fun, especially when you have kids, because you want to go out there and have snowball fights and build snowmen and make all those fun memories. So hopefully we'll get the chance for that. Now we live in the day where kids don't get snow days anymore because the schools hate them. And now we have virtual days where the parents get punished for school being out. And we get to teach our kids information that we know nothing about in a system we know nothing about. So that's an interesting change post-COVID, but it is what it is. We make the best of it. So anyways, let's get to the episode, guys. This is Q&A number 4. Like I said, right now I'm aiming at doing 2 podcast episodes per week. Monday, which is more of the formal educational type episode, and then having one on Thursdays that is more of either a question and answer, or it's just a topic that I really want to discuss and just really want to have a conversation with you guys. Because I had said before in other Q&A episodes that I plan on doing these just kind of, off the top of the head and not really mapping anything out, planning out what I'm going to say, but just answering you guys as if you were sitting right in front of me in my office, or if we were on the gym floor chit-chatting, or a consultation, or you just message me on social media. But there will be some, like today, where I actually do a little pre-planning, because today's question is very specific, and I wanted to make sure I touch on some important points to really help you guys with this situation, with this question. All right, so before we get into it, guys, if you don't mind giving us 5 stars or 4 stars, anything less we don't have time for, but give us some good stars on whatever streaming platform that you are listening to this on, or you can give us some comments or likes or shares. Also, you can view each episode on YouTube. We have our podcast channel on YouTube, the Win on Purpose podcast, so you can either watch the live video or listen to it, just the audio as well, on YouTube. So pretty cool there, guys. So please show us some love, help us get this content out there, help us to share this message of good health, of practical action to creating the best version of ourselves possible and making the most of this life that we've been blessed with. All right, so now that that's done, let's get to the Q&A. So today's question, very good one, guys. Really like this one. Lots of misconceptions here, so let's break this down. It is, how do I build as much muscle as fast as possible? Okay, everybody wants, the quick solution, get in, get it done. And I'm not going to lie, I'm one of those as well. Like, I wish I could just snap my finger and build as much muscle tissue as I have in my head that I want to see, and get as lean and jacked as possible. But that's just not quite possible, at least with, the advancements we have in science for now. But also, honestly, I probably really wouldn't like that much, because I actually do like lifting, and it's a good source of mental therapy for me, mental health therapy. So honestly, I like the process, but it would be nice to be able to build muscle faster, because then I can get to the physique that I want faster. And, that's all good. I can just lift because I enjoy it, rather than lifting and making it harder and harder, which is a concept we're going to talk about in order to build as much muscle as possible. So let's get into my answer. All right. Now, this is not just a simple answer because it's a very broad question and there's lots of places we can take this. So basically, I'm going to give you guys a couple points to keep in mind when it comes to building muscle in general. And then I'm going to give you some things that you can prioritize to make sure that you are building as much muscle as possible, as fast as possible, because we do want quick growth, but we want sustainable growth, and we want growth that's real muscle, okay? Not just body fat added that looks like we're bulkier and more muscle until we lean out again and realize we didn't actually put, lasting tissue onto our frame. So, when it comes to building muscle, guys, one thing that we need to understand right out of the gate, that building muscle is a slow process, okay? I hate to say that because the question, it kind of goes against the question asking how can we do it as fast as possible. Now, that possible point is what we're going to focus on here in a minute. But right now, let's look at the fast part, okay? Muscle building is not a fast thing. Losing body fat is a fast process. You can get really far in just a few weeks, a few months. But if you want to build quality, muscle tissue that stays on you, it's going to take time, guys. There's no way around that, all right? Now, you could take some, performance enhancement substances that could give you an edge and an advantage, and that will help you build muscle a lot faster. But we don't promote that here. To each his own. No judgment, of course. But we don't promote that here because we like to focus on making our health as good as possible, not just our physique, okay? So, outside of that, in the natural realm of things, it's a slow process, all right? Some people now may have more favorable genetics for adding more muscle tissue on their frames than others. But no matter who you are, it's going to take some time, it's going to take work, and it's going to take patience, okay? So if your goal is to add quality muscle tissue, which should be everybody's goal, just know this is going to be a process and you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to continue to show up each and every time, putting in the work, getting better, and then just allow time to do what it does, okay? Now, for newbies, people who are, let's say, anywhere from day 1 to 1 to 2 years of consistent training, you want to focus on quality technique, training form through your exercises, and training intensity. And training intensity is how close to muscle failure you push your body to, any given muscle group, okay? So the closer to failure you are in that exercise or in that working set, the higher the training intensity is. Anything more, now this is kind of how to gauge like your rate of weight gain and if it's actually coming from muscle or not, because we should be paying attention and tracking these things. Anything more than about half a pound of body weight added each week is likely body fat accumulation, okay? Because again, gaining muscle is a slow process. It does not happen very quickly. So make sure to monitor your rate of weight gain, okay? If you're gaining a pound or two per week because you're going through a bulk and you're doing a dirty bulk, which is basically you just eat whatever's in front of you and say that you're bulking, or you're just way over consuming calories and you're gaining more than half a pound at most for newbies, a pound per week at very most, you're most likely adding a bunch of fat tissue with it, which is unfortunate. Now, if you're okay with that and you like the way that it looks, then by all means add it on. But if it's something that you know you're going to have to diet off later, which puts you at a higher chance of losing that new muscle tissue, you want to gain at a slower rate. So that way when you're done bulking, when you're done with your massing phase or gaining muscle phase, you still look relatively good based on how you want it to look, based on what you look like before that phase. And then it's going to be a lot easier to clean things up if you decide to lean out some from there and not have pounds and pounds of body fat that you have to now lose because of what you put on during your bulking season, okay? So typically, the quicker we build it, the easier it is to lose it, okay? If you go through a shorter muscle building phase and maybe you put on some muscle tissue, but it's not there very long before you start dieting and cutting and go into a calorie deficit and losing body fat, you are at a bit of a higher risk of losing that muscle tissue that you added on. So we want to make sure that, we allow time for that muscle to be there and our body to get used to it, our metabolism to adjust to being able to, keep this extra muscle tissue before we do anything else from there. So, basically, there's a concept in bodybuilding and in weightlifting in general, and it's called allowing muscle to marinate. So basically what this means is you build the muscle, but you go in a maintenance phase where you're not losing and you're not gaining, and you allow enough time for that muscle basically to sit on your body, to sit on your bone. And then that way, whenever you go to diet, you have a little bit better of a chance of not burning through that new tissue because it's been there, your body's adapted to it and gotten used to having it. All right, so we want to make sure that we give enough time for that muscle to marinate on the bone and have a better chance of keeping it. All right, so what that could look like is, say if you go through a 6-month gaining phase, then you spend roughly 4 to 6 months in a maintenance phase and just allowing your body time, getting used to the amount of calories now that you have to eat to maintain your body weight, because it should be more than before you put the muscle tissue on. And you just make sure that, again, you allow your body time to get used to having this muscle tissue before you go into a fat loss phase and try, because we always want to prevent muscle loss. The goal is always to keep as much muscle as possible when we're dieting, all right? If that's not your goal, then you are probably going to wreck your health. So we want to make sure we're keeping as much muscle as possible. Now, there's a few things that we want to prioritize to ensure that you can grow as much muscle consistently as possible. So like I said, we're going to touch on that possible part, because fast, maybe not. And again, that can be subjective. So for some people, 2 years is fast. For some people, 2 days is fast. So again, that depends on the person. But, you know, overall, we still can grow muscle as fast as possible if we make sure to prioritize the things that are required to build as much muscle as fast as possible. All right, so I'm going to go down a list here. I have a few points to touch on. So number one is going to be progressive overload. Okay, this is a training principle. Now, what is progressive overload? Basically, you know, just to kind of sum it up in easy verbiage, it's making sure that your training is getting harder each and every week, rather if that's coming from more reps, more load, or more weight that you're lifting, from how many working sets that you're doing, or your training intensity, how close you're getting to failure each week. So maybe, you know, each week you're adding an extra rep to each set. Maybe you're adding more weight and just trying to match the reps from the week before. Or, you know, maybe you are adding more training sets. So, you know, on chest for week 1, you did 6 working sets. However you break that up, the next week you're going for 7 or 8. And then training intensity. So, you know, this week you had a few reps left in the tank, you know, before you got to failure. So next week you go down to about 2 reps left in the tank. The following week, 1 rep. You know, then you go to failure. Then you start the process over. So those are some ways that you can implement progressive overload pretty easily, but this, we do know that it is required in order to build muscle tissue. So if your training is not progressively getting more challenging in one way or another, you're likely going to plateau or just, you know, not actually build any muscle at all, okay? So very important there. Now, again, there are some nuances. If you're a newbie and it's your first time ever training, or maybe you took years and years off from training, progressive overload probably isn't something you have to focus too much on, because as long as you're going in there and just getting a good workout in, you're probably going to grow, because your body, you know, is so inefficient at recovery and at basically handling the damage you're putting on the muscle. You have a bigger chance of growing more muscle without focusing on that. But if you've been lifting for a while, progressive overload is definitely something you should know about and something you should be focusing on in your training. All right, number 2 would be training frequency. So we want to aim to train each muscle group at least 2 times per week for optimal growth. Now, you like your fast recovering muscle groups, like typically for most people that's shoulders, biceps, triceps, calves, you know, forearms, those kind of things. Or slower growing muscles. So say you have a muscle group that is just really stubborn and doesn't seem to grow as fast as your other muscle groups. They may benefit from more than 2 times per week, but I would try to not go lower than 2 times per week. So just 1 time of each muscle group per week, unless you're really, really killing it. I would probably try to increase that a little bit. Even if you just did 2 days a week in the gym and you train full body, and you know you were training hard with progressive overload, but you were still training each muscle group twice per week, then that's going to be pretty solid there. All right. Number 3, training variables. Okay, so we want to make sure that your training variables align with your training experience and with your recovery rate. Okay, so each muscle group should be completely recovered when training it again to prevent a decline in training quality and to ensure your body has time to heal muscle damage and add more muscle tissue, because there's a two-part process that happens. Okay, we have the process of healing muscle. So you do a workout, you break down muscle tissue, and it takes, anywhere from typically 48 to 72 hours on average for a muscle to heal. Okay, now it could be less than that, could be more than that, just depends on the person, the situation, the training experience, and how intense the workout was. But on average, and I would say probably 24 to 72 hours is about your window of when your body heals the muscle damage that happens. So when you train hard, that soreness that you feel, that's because these micro muscle fibers are being torn. And so we want to allow those to recover so, we're healed. But that's not all that happens, okay? And that's not when we're actually building more muscle tissue. That's when we're just recovering from the damage that had happened during our session. So after that, and you could call that, oh man, what is the term? Golly, sorry guys, completely went blank. You can call that, I'll come back to that if it comes to me, because completely had a brain lapse there. So anyways, like I said, your training variables are going to be very important. And if we only allow enough time or resources from our nutrition, which is our next point, we only allow enough to just recover the muscle damage. We never allow for our body to build more muscle tissue, because that comes after we heal the damage. So if we just heal the damage and then we're training a muscle group while it's still sore, which most likely it's not recovered from damage, then one, we can hinder our training performance. So we typically, a muscle just can't push as hard when it's still damaged and it hasn't recovered all the way. Not so much really increasing the risk of injury per se, but we do increase the risk of overtraining and just feeling worse, and then overall just building less muscle. So if you're going in and you're training a sore muscle every day, you're probably just going to be beating up your joints and your connective tissue and not really building muscle from that. So I'm going to make sure that we have plenty of recovering time in between sessions, but also that the volume and the intensity of each session is at the right amount, so we have enough time in between training sessions to recover. So if you train chest Monday and Thursday, by Wednesday night, your chest should be pretty much good to go. Maybe just a hint of soreness at most. That way when you wake up Thursday morning, say you train Thursday morning, you wake up Thursday morning, your chest feels good and you're good to go. That's recovering right on time. And that would be probably most ideal, but you definitely don't want to be super sore and then go in there and try to train the same muscle group, because you're not going to get very much growth out of that typically. All right, so making sure again that our recovery rate is good and that our training variables, so we're doing enough reps to get a really good pump in the muscle, get that really tight, full sensation, burning sensation in the muscle. But we don't want to do so much that we're causing too much damage, which therefore hinders our life outside of the gym. Some soreness is cool, but we don't want to be handicapped when we're not in the gym, because now we can't get our steps in, we can't be as active, we don't enjoy our quality of life as much, and that defeats the purpose of, transforming ourselves in the best way possible. All right. So number 4 is going to be nutrition. So if you want to build muscle, you need to be consuming adequate protein every day, okay? Aiming for about 1 gram per pound of body weight is a good starting point for most people to cover daily needs. So there's a lot of variation there. There's a lot of argument over how much is needed. The government recommendations are quite a bit less than that for most people. So it's really up to you. But if you just want a really easy way to gauge how much protein you should be consuming, if you weigh 150 pounds, if you're getting 150 grams of protein per day, you are almost guaranteed to cover all your needs. Now, if you are like morbidly obese or you have a lot of weight to lose, you may want to aim more for about 1 gram per pound of desired body weight. So you're 350 pounds, you should be about 180. Then I would aim more for like around that 180, because 300 grams is just going to be overkill. There's no really good purpose coming from that. or good results coming from that, it's definitely not going to make you grow more muscle. So aiming for an easy number that you can do but is still adequate is best. All right. So some points on that is as far as nutrition goes overall. Total caloric consumption is extremely important if you want to build as much muscle as you can. All right, we need to know how much we're eating, what that looks like, what our macro, at least have an idea of our macros, our protein, carbs, and fats, or at least our protein and our calories, because I'm going to explain why here. So eating in a calorie deficit, eating less calories than your body is burning any given day, or even calorie maintenance for those who have a harder time building muscle, will almost guarantee that you won't build much muscle. Okay, that's just science, guys. It's just the way the body works. It's energy balance. If you're burning more calories than your body's consuming, outside of being brand new to training, or again being more on that morbidly obese side, the chances of you building quality muscle, in any decent time frame, while in a calorie deficit or calorie maintenance for a lot of people, probably isn't going to happen. So the best idea, if you want to build, again, this is about building as much muscle as fast as possible. Okay, that's the context here. So in that context, it'd probably be best to spend the majority of your year in a calorie surplus to make sure you're providing your body with enough resources to recover and, again, to add more tissue. So this is extremely important, guys. And a lot of people stumble here, and this is where they fall off and where they don't end up building more muscle, because they're afraid to gain body weight. And that is not the mentality you want to have when you're trying to get as jacked as possible, when you're trying to build as much muscle as possible, okay? Or even just a good amount of muscle. You have to be comfortable with that body weight going up, because if the body weight's not going up, you're not adding anything, obviously, including muscle tissue. So we want to be comfortable with that. Now, again, going back to previous points, we want to be controlled with it. We don't want to just go off the hinges and say, I'm going to be on a seafood diet, I'm going to eat everything I see because I'm trying to build muscle, and that's our excuse to be gluttonous and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. But you have to be comfortable with adding a little bit of weight and probably adding a little bit of body fat onto your frame if you want to build as much muscle as possible. And that's totally fine, because if you're in control and you're doing this systematically, then you'll be able to pull that body fat back off later and then keep all that muscle tissue, and now you're going to look completely different, and your metabolism is going to be better, and you're going to feel better and all that, okay? So think of it in that long-term process when it comes to gaining body weight in order to build more muscle, all right? Point number 5, sleep, okay? Big one here. So sleep is one of the most important actions required to build more muscle tissue. Outside of training and our nutrition needs, sleep is the ticket, guys. So our body does all of its repairs and growing during sleep. So adequate and quality sleep, let me emphasize that, because I'm not talking about just how long you're sleeping. If your sleep is crap while you're sleeping, that doesn't really count towards that good recovery, muscle building, promoting sleep. So this type of adequate, high quality sleep is vital for muscle growth. So we want to try to aim for around like 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night to maximize recovery and gym performance the following day. If we get less sleep any given night, most likely our gym performance is going to be affected the next day. We're not going to be able to train as hard. We may not be able to progressively overload from the last week. So this is a problem, because we potentially grow less muscle in that situation. And then, again, we want that 7 to 8 hours. Now, 7 to 8. Now, for some people, this may be a little bit more. If you're someone like me who has a problem sleeping very long, like consistently, I have a lot of neck pain that bothers me at night. It's hard to stay comfortable. I have to toss and turn a lot. Or if you're someone that has to get up and go to the bathroom a lot, or if you have kids and, like newborns or kids that have trouble staying asleep throughout the night and you have to get up with them. Anytime that your sleep is disturbed, you may want to consider trying to get more time of sleep in, because then you can kind of make up for some of that time that you're not actually sleeping, or it's lower quality. But I wouldn't recommend getting lower than that. Now, if you have to, you have to. Like if your work schedule and your life schedule doesn't allow you to get more sleep, there's not a lot you can do about that. You're going to have to change those things. But we know through a bunch of studies on sleep that when comparing people who get 7 to 8 hours of sleep versus people who get 6 or less hours of sleep, and usually closer like that 5 or less hours per sleep, it is a crazy difference in the amount of body fat that they lose versus muscle that they lose. So the group that gets the least amount of sleep loses, it say that they're in a fat loss phase, right? Some studies show that up to 80% of the weight that they lose during that fat loss phase comes from muscle tissue, not body fat. So the body will definitely break down muscle tissue for energy when we're sleep deprived, and that's not something we want. Again, we become less efficient at everything in our day. So not just our training, but every aspect of our life suffers when we don't get adequate sleep, okay? So make sure that we're doing that. And the last point, number 6, that we're going to touch on, which is one that most people never think about when it comes to building muscle or improving their health in general, and that is stress management, all right? Many of us spend the majority of our time with high stress, which turns us into basically a cortisol ticking time bomb, all right? So when we stay in that fight or flight response, or, high cortisol levels, chronic high cortisol levels, due to chronic stress can prevent the body from prioritizing growth and rather just prioritizes you staying alive, basically. So manage your daily stress if you want to get jacked, all right? Things like meditation, prayer, reading, going for walks, having a good conversation with someone you love, watching a show that you enjoy, preferably not something scary that stresses you out or super dramatic or whatever, suspenseful, something you enjoy, playing video games that aren't super stressful. There's so many different things that you can do that are stress reducing, promoting, and that's really up to you. It looks different for each person, but you will highly benefit, and your gains will highly benefit from managing your daily stress, okay? And if you have a high stress job and a high stress life, this becomes even more important, and you're really going to be at a higher probability of struggling to build adequate muscle tissue and keeping it if you can't get that stress under control. So if you're in a season where you're super stressed out and just work is crazy, life is crazy, it is what it is. But if that's a chronic situation where work is always stressful, home life is always stressful, these are some areas to look at to make improvements in, whether if it's switching jobs, figuring out what you need to do on the home front to lower that daily stress. Whatever you got to do, guys, your health, your muscle, and your lifespan will thank you, if you will prioritize on that, because stress is a silent killer. We know that for sure, and it will literally remove years of your life if you do not get stress under control, all right? So those are my points, guys. To prioritize, if you really want to maximize your muscle growth and build as much muscle as fast as possible. But again, just kind of summarizing, we got to understand building muscle is a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen next week or next month. It's that consistency of showing up, workout after workout, putting in the work, doing all these other things that we talked about. And then over time, we see this muscle added on. And it's always worth it, I promise you. In the end, you'll never regret the work you had to do when you see what you want to see in the mirror, okay? Or you feel that extra strength you have from having extra muscle, all right? We want to make sure that we give time for that muscle to stay on our body for a little bit before we go right back into dieting to clean things up and just burn all that muscle off. And then we went over those things that we want to prioritize, like progressive overload, our training frequency, training variables, nutrition, sleep, and stress management. And if we focus on these things, we will put ourselves in a position to build as much muscle as possible, as fast as possible. Because, again, even though it's a slower process, we don't want to waste time. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you have the time to waste, and that's totally fine. Like, whatever. Spend however much time you want in the gym, however many days per week. But busy individuals like us who have families and jobs and businesses and responsibilities and all these things going on in life, we don't have the time to waste spending 2 or 3 hours in the gym 6-7 days a week, week after week, just to get minimal, if any, gains, okay? We want to get in there, be as efficient as possible, do the least amount to get the most out of it, the least amount of days, the least amount of sets, the least amount of time, the least amount of effort and thought, so we can put all of that extra energy and thought process into the things that are our responsibilities in life, and really just maximize our efficiency. Because if you work with me, my favorite word is efficiency. I want to make sure that everything that I do is as efficient as possible. Gym, diet, sleep, relationships, work, everything, all right? That is a key to success is making sure you are as efficient as possible at everything you do, guys. So I hope this was helpful for you. Share it with somebody that you know that wants to get jacked, that wants to build muscle and not waste their time, all right? And if you felt that this was beneficial, please leave a comment, give us a thumbs up so we can keep making good quality content like this for you. So in the meantime, in between time, whatever you do something good for yourself, something good for your health, something good for those you care about, and whatever you do, make sure you win on purpose. Talk at you next time.